This is Dr. Rodriguez, Psych 101. We're looking at Chapter 11, Personality. So what is personality? Personality is who you are. It's this characteristic way of thinking, feeling, and behaving that is unique to you. Your personality refers to how you go about interacting with others and the world around you. Now, the portion of psychology that's called personality psychology, it looks at all these different theories for how we become who we are. How do we acquire personality, and how can we go about measuring it? So personality psychology studies a bunch of different personality traits. It helps us to make sense of how each of us is like all people, like some people, and like no other person. Personality psychology offers insight into why we make the choices we do, what type of internal forces are shaping our decisions, are shaping our feelings and our way of interacting with the world. Personality psychology uses the information acquired from studying personality traits to be able to predict yours and others' behaviors, as well as personality psychology looks at how our personality changes or stays the same throughout life. And what they have found is that our personality changes a lot until about 30, and then really after that, we remain pretty consistent in our personality in terms of like openness and how emotional we are, and so we do a lot of changing earlier on and then become a lot more stable as we age. Okay, so looking at these different personality theories, when I think about theories, I think about how theories are just a bunch of people sitting around a table offering their take on something. So personality theories are a bunch of different takes on how we acquire personality and how we can measure it. There's no one theory that is the correct one, but when we take all these different theories together, it provides a comprehensive picture of what is going on in terms of personality. So the first theory we're going to look at is the biological perspective on personality. The biological theory says that personality is our biology. All right, we act the way we do, we think the way we do because of something going on inside of us, because of body chemicals, because of our brain functioning, because of genetics. And we can trace this theory way back to ancient times where Hippocrates, he said that we act the way we do because of the different humors, the different fluids in our body. If we have more of one fluid or less of another fluid, we can notice that in how we interact with the world. So a fix for personality issues or, problems might be maybe bloodletting. So cutting somebody open and letting blood flow out to return balance. So this was, ancient times where personality or temperament was thought to be the result of the balance or imbalance of different fluids or humors in the body. Today, we look more towards neuroscience, looking at our brain structure and our brain functioning and how that influences how we think and how we behave. Neurotransmitters and the role that they play in our behavior. Hormones, our genetics. So underneath this whole biology theory today, we might talk about Phineas Gage and how Phineas Gage, do you remember Phineas Gage? He said that, or he was this railroad worker, and he had this rod go through the front of his head, and it damaged his frontal cortex, the front part of his head, and his personality was forever changed after that. He went from a pretty pleasant guy to, a very abrasive guy with a lot of anger issues. And so that let us know that our brain function, how it functions, these different brain structures influence our behavior. More modern research has found that different brain parts influence our personality, like more folds in our prefrontal cortex, so that, that wavy part of our brain, the more of waves we have, the more open we are to new experiences. Other explanations that biological personality theory might give us is that our chemicals are responsible for how we think and how we behave, and we might have a chemical imbalance. Our hormones might be out of whack. Our neurotransmitters might not be, functioning as they should, and that is causing perhaps depression or manic episodes, or causing behavioral or other issues in our life. So SSRIs are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, and that has to do with like Zoloft. Zoloft is an SSRI. It's a drug that keeps serotonin in our synapses longer. And serotonin is this feel-good neurotransmitter. And when we keep it in our synapses longer, it's able to be absorbed more. And so we feel better. So that's one example of how a chemical imbalance, serotonin, not having enough serotonin in your body, can result in depression. And taking an antidepressant like an SSRI keeps those good chemicals, like feel-good chemicals of serotonin in the synapses longer and be able to absorb. Twin studies also offer us insight into the biological aspects of personality. So by studying twins, dizygotic, so fraternal twins, or monozygotic, identical twins, and especially those that are maybe adopted out and they're raised in different environments, or maybe they're living together, it offers us a lot of insight into what impact living in different environments can have. How similar are monozygotic twins? They have the same exact genetic makeup. So when they act different, it must be because of their environment, right? Or what is it? So twins offer us insight into how much things are genetic and how much things are environment, because monozygotic twins have 100% of their genes exactly the same, where dizygotic, they're like regular siblings, so their genetic material is a little less. All right, so according to the biological perspective, we have problems in our thinking and the way we behave. We have problems in our life when we have a chemical imbalance, or maybe an injury like Phineas Gage, or maybe illness. So something changes biologically in our body to create, to create these problems in how we think and how we behave. And we can assess our personality. We can assess these different traits, chemicals, and brain structure and functioning through medical or maybe genetic testing. We can look at so Down syndrome is a genetic disorder, looking a chromosomal disorder, one too many chromosomes. So through assessing it in medically or genetically, we can identify maybe what's a little out of whack, and then be able to treat that either through neurotransmitters or hormones or surgery. All right. So let's look now at the psychoanalytic. When I say psychoanalytic, you should immediately think of Freud. And Freud did his work in the early 1900s. And remember, Freud's theory was all about the unconscious. It's all about this struggle between this id, ego, and superego. The id is our part of our unconscious. That's all about I want. It's this pleasure principle. I want to have sex. I want to eat. I want to do this. It's kind of the devil on your shoulder, right? And your superego is what you acquire through socialization, through people saying, you can't do that. That's not right. Don't do that. It's us acquiring our rules. So the superego I remember as our super goody two-shoe part of us is the one that's all about the rules. So you have this I want. The id is all about instinct. I want pleasure. And then the superego is the rule follower, and the ego is finding a balance between these. So according to the psychoanalytic perspective, our personality comes from our unconscious. Our personality is our unconscious having a conflict, and how well we resolve those conflicts between the id and the superego is our personality. So we have problems in our personality when our id, ego, and superego are out of whack. When we're listening maybe too much to our id, the I want, the pleasure principle, you might end up in prison, right? Because you're just doing whatever you want. Maybe you are stealing, maybe you're murdering, okay? It is all about, I want to do this, I'm going to do this. If you listen to your super ego too much, the super goody two-shoe, the rules, maybe you have a lot of anxiety or depression because you're a perfectionist. So we have problems when our unconscious, our id, ego, super ego is out of whack. Freud also talked a lot about early childhood development. He stressed that our personality comes from our early years in childhood. And he offered the psychosexual stages of development. And he said that we move through these stages, and in each stage there's a conflict that we have to resolve. And the way I remember it is through the sentence, only adults play love games. Only adults play love games. The O stands for oral, anal, phallic, latency, genital. And I'm going to play another video that's going to look at each of these stages a lot more. Now, if you don't resolve the conflict before moving on to the if you don't successfully resolve the conflict going on in each stage, you become fixated. You become stuck in that stage, and you're going to have problems later on. So if you don't successfully complete the oral stage, maybe later on you'll have an oral fixation. You'll eat too much. Maybe you'll smoke. You'll maybe you chew on your pencils too much. You have this oral fixation. And Freud would say, oh, that's because you didn't resolve your you didn't resolve the oral stage successfully. Anal, if you don't resolve this, if you become fixated in the anal stage, maybe you're anal retentive. You have to be so perfectionistic. So I'm going to play a video that'll look at that a little bit more. So Freud would say that you have problems in your personality when you become fixated, when you become stuck in a stage, when you don't successfully resolve it, or when you have this unconscious conflict between this id and your super ego and your ego, and it's all out of whack because your ego isn't finding a nice balance between this id and the super ego. You can assess your personality according to the psychoanalytic perspective through projection tests. So when you have a projection test, it's like this Rorschach ink blot. You're looking at an ambiguous picture, and then you say, okay, what do you see? And when they start saying what they see, it offers us insight into the unconscious. You have to bring the unconscious to a conscious level through maybe dream analysis, through projection tests, through free association. You get people to talk, and through talking and maybe interpreting ambiguous stimuli, you can get insight into what's going on in their brain. So if somebody looked at this and they said, I see somebody, two bats sucking out the brain out of, a human being. Well, that offers some pretty dark insight into a person, right? So projection tests offer us insight into the unconscious, what's going on, what type of conflict is happening in the unconscious. So a criticism of psychoanalytic projection tests is that it's low in reliability, validity, interpretation of this ambiguous stimuli and what the clients say is more of an art than a science. There's no scientific research that says if somebody sees this in it, then it means this. It lacks scientific backing.